My name is Isabel, I'm 34 years old, and I've always carried myself with effortless elegance, well-fitted dresses that flutter just above the sand, long dark hair cascading in soft waves, and fair skin that catches the soft tints of sunset just right, like I've been patiently waiting for a camera to find me. My husband, Emre, is Turkish, tall, olive-skinned in a way that suggests strength, with a meticulously groomed beard and a presence that demands attention. He's always immaculately dressed, a sharp contrast to my soft silhouette. Together we look like a curated photograph, until newer, sharper truths begin to crack the surface. We're on a so-called trip of romance, the kind countless couples envy, a secluded tropical island with turquoise waves whispering at silvery shorelines, coconut palms swaying in the breeze, and skies so vast it feels like it should cradle our hopes. I imagined this trip would be about us rediscovering one another, finding laughter under stars, quiet confessions at dawn, hand-holding in the surf. But from the very first dinner, I felt that plan begin to fracture. I let him lead me to our candlelit table overlooking the sea, trying to match his stride, my heart light with expectations. We sat across from each other, the ocean's lullaby beneath us, the air fragrant with night-blooming flowers. And then he said it, in that calm, controlled tone, "This trip isn't about you." My breath paused, my heart froze. Those 5 words landed like a stone in the center of my chest, dragging the polite, familiar warmth from everything around me. It was a quiet declaration of dismissal and betrayal disguised as casual remark. I wanted to lash out, to demand, "What do you mean?" But I didn't. Instead, I smiled, lifted my glass of white wine, let the cool liquid steady the tremor in my hand, and let him have the silence. Dinner ended with the murmur of waves and polite farewells from other guests, everything pretending to glow, to be ordinary. But sheeting through me was the whisper of suspicion. Had he already emotionally checked out? Was there someone else? The words, their finality, invited questions I argued I didn't want to ask. Yet I felt them subtle, hard and undeniable. Later, in the darkness of our room, with only a dim lamp casting soft shadows against the walls, I asked myself who I was in his life. I pictured my reflection, calm, composed, pristine. Who was I, if not the center of our shared story? I stared at myself long enough to see potential, not victimhood, nor pity, but quiet power simmering beneath pain. And I decided, right then, that this trip would still become about me. Before I could lose myself to tears, I forced myself up and looked at the camera on the vanity, its black lens unmoved, objective, like some neutral confessor. I swallowed and in a voice slightly trembling but gathering strength, said, "If you've ever felt invisible, thank you for watching." I paused, letting it linger. "Drop a like if you know loneliness in a crowded room," I whispered. Then I blinked the moisture away. I refused to let this moment define me, not yet, not how it wanted. And in the dark, the ocean beyond our window silent, I began mapping out the reclamation, not with shouts, but with presence. I would not be erased. I would not go quietly. This trip might have started to be about him, but I would make it become about me. Morning came pale and gentle, the first light folding softly across the room, sliding against the edge of the bed where I sat, knees pulled close to my chest. My mind raced. The phrase echoed endlessly, "This trip isn't about you." I felt like I was unraveling, until I forced myself to breathe deeper, reminding myself who I was: Isabel, composed, aware, deserving. I dressed in a flowing white dress that whispered of innocence and resilience, barefoot on cool tile, hair loose around my shoulders. I slipped out of the room before Emre could wake, before I could feel that dismissal again. In the lush resort gardens, birds called overhead, the air fragrant with frangipani and salt. I walked, letting each breath steady the storm inside me. Then I saw her, a striking blonde, sun-kissed hair cascading almost too perfectly, muscles that moved with purpose and seduction, eyes framed by a confidence that dared me to look away. She was with him. They stood close, faces bright in shared laughter, bodies touching. I stopped, breath caught in my chest. I should have turned away. I should have whispered hurt. Instead, I watched, numbly, as his posture softened, as he let himself lean into her warmth. I didn't approach, I couldn't. But every step he took away from me felt like a breadcrumb in a trail I followed inward. I slipped to a secluded bench. My heart trembled. Embarrassment flooded me first, that this scene was here where anyone could see. But then a slow, hot anger crept up, pushing past hurt and fear. And in that swirl of betrayal and self-preservation, I felt something else, clarity. I said to myself, this won't look like me collapsing, I will make it look like me standing taller than I ever dreamed. I spent the day in the sea. Each stroke whispering, I will reclaim myself. I watched the horizon, thinking of all the women who've been whispered over, made small. I told myself, not this time. When I returned to our villa later, I forced a smile, let it glide across my features, calm and cool. Emre looked uneasy, glanced at me quickly before moving on. Each polite interaction became a rehearsal of strength. I let the resort staff treat me with courtesy and warmth, letting their recognition settle in, a reminder that I existed. At dusk, I stood alone against the ocean view balcony, moonlight weaving through my hair. Waves crashed softly beneath. I vowed quietly, as foam curved and shattered, I will claim this narrative. This trip will become about me, not because he made it that way, but because I chose to. Dawn broke in golden ribbons across the ceiling. I woke with intent, my skin prickling with purpose. I brewed tea, inhaled the steam, and rehearsed my posture, slow, deliberate, composed. I chose a pale rose silk wrap dress, its softness speaking of confidence, and added a pearl and emerald necklace that caught the light near my collarbone. I looked in the mirror and recognized someone I hadn't seen, a woman poised on the edge of reclaiming her power. Downstairs, I found the concierge. "Good morning," I said gently. "Could you please charge the dinner tonight to room 1? They raised an eyebrow. Room 1 wasn't ours. I nodded, small and sincere. They paused, hesitating. But I didn't waver. I smiled. "Room 1, I repeated. "That's me." The uncertainty in their eyes made my chest ache with triumph. I was rewriting the narrative. Throughout the day I moved through the resort not as background, but as focal point, tender smiles, quiet acknowledgement from staff, fellow guests turning to say hello. I let them. I reveled in the attention not as vanity, but as affirmation. Meanwhile, Emre and the blonde wandered steps behind, a reflection of choices he thought would remain invisible. They laughed, talked, reaching toward each other before he broke away to return inside. I watched, waiting, poised, until the edges of their silhouettes blurred and he blamed glass for what was clear. Later, by the pool bar, I allowed a moment to play out. I walked up, turned unexpectedly, my dress soft and flowing, gaze quiet but pointed. The blonde's eyes flickered, recognition, panic. Emre stiffened. But I just smiled, gave a nod, then turned away, cool and elegant in my reclaiming. No confrontation, just presence. Ownership. "Isabel, you look beautiful," he said, voice quiet, tremor of confusion beneath. "Thank you," I replied, soft and measured. I took a sip of my drink, coconut and ice, and let his discomfort stretch the moment. The blonde slunk away. It was a small victory, but real. At night, balancing moonlight and memory, I found strength in breathing. My betrayal, my heartbreak, felt less like heavy chains and more like tools, like fuel. The final dawn arrived, and I didn't rush to wake. Instead, I drifted into the outdoor shower, warm water danced across my shoulders, the scent of ocean and jasmine in the air. Each droplet felt like a release. I dressed slowly, delicate blue maxi that flowed like water, hair framing my face, eyes steady. I looked in the mirror and didn't see brokenness, I saw resolve. He knocked quietly on the door. Isabel, breakfast? I looked at the sunrise, then nodded. Yes, breakfast. Calm. Measured. We sat on the terrace together, plates untouched, the day stretching before us. He started to speak, a stammer of apology, of regret, of wanting to fix things. I listened. Each word weighed. Then I stood. Softly. With clarity, this trip was never about you, I said, voice quiet but carrying through the salt-laden breeze. It was never just pleasure. It was about truth. He looked at me, shock, guilt, panic intruding. I closed my suitcase, still calm, and whispered, I'm going home. That's it, simple, clean. I said, this time, it's about me. And I turned away, toward the path that led from sun and sand to self and future. I walked through the lobby, palms brushing the polished wood, staff glancing up as I passed. No words, just a woman reborn. I boarded the first solo flight, the hum of the engine steady beneath me, and watched the island shrink behind me. My breathing evened. I felt clarity settle into my bones. I had reclaimed my narrative. So if this story, my heartbreak and quiet power, resonated with you, please, subscribe, comment, because we are not invisible. If I can reclaim my story, so can you. This trip, it became about me. And maybe, just maybe, it can become about you too.